Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and as always it's my continuing mission to explore strange new games with you, to seek out new titles, and do reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Today we're sitting down to take a look at the long-awaited Judgment for PS4. Developed and published by Sega, Judgment's a spin-off of the Japanese crime lord syndicate-inspired titles Yakuza, except here you're exploring the world through the eyes of an ex-lawyer and private detective Takayuki Yagami as he investigates a series of murders and uncovers the truth of a crime in a case that completely shattered his world. One part Yakuza, one part LA Noire, and a bit of Ace Attorney rubbed up on in there for good measure. Judgment was originally released for the PS4 in Japan December 2018, but sees its way to the rest of us June 21st for those who pre-ordered on PSN and June 25th for the normal edition. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. Or if you don't like me, go out and find a smaller YouTuber and give them a subscription. Maybe hit that bell button so you can actually get notified of their stuff, especially now with YouTube so crazy. So, without further ado, here's my review for Judgment. Missions absolutely possible, black belt lawyers, and the excellence of playing a Sega game inside another Sega game, because you know what? You like Sega games. Graphics are up first. I gotta say, the Dragon Engine continues to impress here on the console with excellent visuals, color use, and effects, regardless if you're tailing a possible con artist through the neon-soaked lights of the city one moment or taking pictures of adulterers humping neighbors half their age in crappy hotels the next. I have always loved the Yakuza cityscape, and they nail it here. Take the gritty side streets of most major cities and then dose them in an LSD tab or two of color and effects, and this is pretty much what you get. Everything has a nice saturated sheen to it, and a good picture, though at times, the aliasing does actually show up in a couple of places. But what the Yakuza games have always done is interlace one of the most fantastically realistic feeling locations with interaction. And Judgment does that with the same incredible number of buildings explorable, people to meet, and secret places to find. Judgment really continues to fill out the world of Yakuza, but seen from the side of the men and women in blue, as well as the lawyers that work on the often shady, consistently dangerous side of the law. There's a natural feeling to the game world that comes with the expertise of knowing the game engine and knowing how far you can actually push it. Rarely do elements of it look gamified, and instead it's an organic, explorable cityscape where one turn leads you to a small corner store and the next leads you to some out-of-the-way coffee shop that wants you to blind taste test. All the graphics in the world are not going to help you if you don't actually know what to do with them. The game world is incredibly detailed, from fully furnished stores on multiple floors in some locations, as well as excellent numbers of NPCs all over the screen, always making everything actually feel alive in the city streets. When it comes to the texture work and the detail, it's around what the prior titles have offered, and while there are some games, especially recently, that I think have eclipsed it, the seriously huge number of characters that you're going to meet through the game's 12 plus chapters, tons of side missions and various minigames, really never shows any weak side. Rarely do you get an NPC waddling in who looks like their face was created at a waxworks with an overtaxed employee at the helm, just pumping out the details. Overall, everyone looks good and fits the game world. Though NPCs that you don't meet are going to be a bit of a step down from everyone else, it still works overall with the aesthetic. And that's continued on when it comes to the animations for the characters and the ever-growing martial arts list the main character acquires, as well as the diverse enemies that you meet. It all fits into a low-gravity, high-impact fighting engine that we've seen before. The designs are really solid, even if the main character's pants are so tight that if he was in the police force, his rank would be sausage. Now, when it comes to the performance, this is a 30 FPS title, so if you're waiting for a higher FPS, you might want to stick around for a possible PC port later down the line. That out of the way, it never really wavers below 30 unless it's loading a scene, and then there's a momentary blip and then it's back to normal. I do have a couple complaints though. When doing some activities, you get interrupted weirdly, like say running, and you get a phone call. While that's no big deal in a lot of games, in Judgment, something happens I haven't seen in the engine before, and I tested on the Pro and the normal PS4 on SSD and on normal hard drives. For some reason, the game sometimes pauses a moment before those events happen. It's not always, but it happens occasionally. Also, I love the ability to use first person in the game and enjoy just walking around the city. It isn't fully fledged first person camera, and while sometimes you're able to do it, most of the times it'll pop you out into third person for a lot of the activities. How does this all come together though? I would say Judgment lands around where the latest Yakuza games have landed. We've had one come in at 60 FPS. Unfortunately, this does not hit that. The series' excellent design and glitz, though, continues, and it really excels here, and you don't get an open world bereft of location standard but stretching out into the horizon. Instead, it's a small town simulator with an attention to detail to bring it to life as much as possible. And with those goals in mind, Judgment hits the mark. Sound, music, and voice.
What was the point of it?
I was trying to get away from a cop.
Asshole just wouldn't get off my case. But when I saw you on the phone, I had the greatest idea.
Okay, go on.
Oh, I had that day off, man. If anyone's gonna know, it's our manager. He doesn't come in till nighttime, though.
The manager, huh? This him?
Oh, it is.
What's his name?
Over on Supon Street. Me and a few Matsugani boys had a little run-in with a Kiori guy. Turns out that was your boy, Kume.
And let's do music first, and I'm not sure what I expected here, but what I got was actually a great deal more, and that's a nice surprise. Judgment completely changes the soundtrack I was expecting, with a very heavy noir-inspired soundtrack throughout the entire game. Easily identifiable in here are a number of jazz-influenced tracks and sections, as well as a thicker, lower-level ebb to the music when you're exploring that did wonders to set the mood of a more gritty tale than the past games did. There are times like battles, both boss and random, where it picks up and suddenly some electric guitars wailing in the background like power chords are endangered, and playing them is the only way to keep them for posterity. Nevertheless, even those moments start to settle down, and there's this nice blanket of moody but sedate themes that starts to play out, with percussions lightly tapping in the background interspersed with some excellent low-ebb riffs, all of it seamlessly evoking that older noir style. If I had any complaints, it's that occasionally it doesn't feel like a collective whole, and much of that is due to how the game is played in a non-linear fashion, which I'll discuss a bit in the gameplay section. But it's a small problem that I don't see bothering anybody, and I wouldn't listen to this outside of the game, but within the title, it works really well. And let's do voice next. So one thing to remember, due to the main voice actor from the Japanese version of the game getting caught stroking the fires of his inner artist by snorting a railroad container worth of cocaine and promptly being replaced, that means the voice actor in Judgment isn't the same one in this game as it is in the Japanese version. You do have the choice of playing with either Japanese or English subtitles as well as voiceovers, and both actually do a really good job being emotive and driving home moments of quiet respect, like the main character when he's dealing with NPCs he feels he's let down, or the main over-the-top moments when a boss battle occurs. Voice work in the Yakuza series I've always been a big fan of overall, and that continues in Judgment. One extra element of work that the developers did was to make sure that the English voiceovers actually lip sync with the Japanese words. It's not perfect, but you can actually notice. Now, that being said, Judgment doesn't go for nearly as much over-the-top sentiment and circus-like moments of the original game, resulting in a main character that at times I think a lot of people are going to feel is a bit dry. For me, though, I'd say it was fine. And lastly, when it comes to this audio section, we're going to talk about sound. I would say this game really continues the excellent work of the past titles, enveloping the player in a feeling of walking through a living city, with all manner of ambient and environmental sounds emerging as you move around in your missions and interact with people in the game world. Samples of people talking, animals, cars, various environmental actions all play out in a seamless blend that never really brings attention to any one element, and I like that. But I think we all like a battle, and when you jump into the action and grab some random store owner's sign without their permission and then beat an enemy to the point that not even their parents are going to be able to recognize them, it sounds really good, with the crash of bulbs and plastic when swinging a sign, to the clang of spokes and rattle of metal parts when throwing a bike into an enemy's face hard enough he's going to shit sprockets for the next 6 weeks. The game perfectly handles the switching from the more sedate to, well, the more psychotic. I will have to say that one issue that seemed to crop up occasionally is in the heavier populated areas, you still do get that occasional moment of static din that occurs, especially when crowds begin to sound a bit less like people and a bit more like Grandpa trying to find that FM station on the radio that went out of business in 1945. Other than that, damn good. And that brings us to gameplay and a bit about the story. In Judgment, you play as Private Detective Takayama Yagami, who, prior to the starting of the game, used to be a lawyer, but your bad judgment in a particularly loathsome case has seen you taking on private detective work instead. The game starts out quickly immersing you in the first of a number of cases that both extend the Yakuza storyline, at least tangentially, by further fleshing out some of the locations and just giving more color to the world, as well as a focus on the other side of the Yakuza lifestyle. The game follows the main theme of your mistake and the repercussions felt both in the past and now. It all comes down to the core gameplay of the Yakuza titles, which is a lot of the same here, with you exploring the game world, interacting with the characters, furthering stories by doing quests for them, and of course the Yakuza staple, which is randomly bumping into street thugs who can't seem to use a phone to call each other and warn each other that a hipster-looking private detective with hair like Sonic the Hedgehog has been kicking the ever-living shit out of everyone, so, maybe don't attack him every chance you get. And while the dichotomy in the Yakuza game was always about a character who wanted peace but always got war, here the dichotomy is a character who should be kicking back with a law book, who's such an absolute badass. It's like Alan Shore from Boston Legal mixed his DNA with Chuck Liddell and that dude from The Last Dragon and then gave themselves superpowers. And speaking of superpowers, fighting has the core mechanics here of the original games. It's got it down pat with various attacks and dodges and lock-on abilities and so forth. It also changes up the gameplay a bit. First, you have two fighting styles. One is more suited for mono-y-mono, prepping you for harder single characters, and is a hard-hitting punch-a-thon, where most of the time it looks like you're trying to mimic the Hadron Collider with a fist in someone else's sternum. Then there's the more open and free style for multi-opponents, which stresses a bit more freedom of movement and some over-the-top moves to keep you away from the grasp of enemies, and you can switch between the two at any time in battle. Also, once again, you have a massive skill tree, separated into three main groups that get you experience when you're doing activities in the world. The three categories are battle, special, and ability, which includes tons of upgrades for combat moves, as well as mini-games, helping you during the investigation scenes, increasing bonuses from resting and eating, and so forth. Now, speaking of investigations, let's see if this is Magnum PI or Castle. In Judgment, you investigate cases in this new mode, as well as looking over crimes and identifying clues and putting the pieces together of the cases slowly by filling out your casebook to drive down enough details that you can fulfill the requirements of the story chapter. Sometimes you're using a drone to spy on people around the city and locate them. Other times you're tailing people, and other times you're just collecting clues and then going back to the police department or your contacts or various less savory people and trying to pull it all together. That, plus the main story moments, make up a lot of the core narrative gameplay. Investigating crime scenes is actually pretty cool, though not incredibly detailed, with you usually looking over space and identifying different unique key elements to a crime scene or pictures, and then later going and talking to NPCs and sometimes showing them the picture or pointing out different details. It feels about as deep as typical side stuff in Yakuza feels, which is to say, not a lot. But it works, and it does flesh out the investigator role. That doesn't mean all of the activities are good. The act of tailing people in particular is half-baked mechanically at best, and the main character is about as stealthy as a bag of smashed assholes with some feet duct taped to it. It's a Yakuza game anyway, so you're constantly crashing into shit between bikes and people and signs and walls and doors and traffic cones and guardrails. Putting a stealth minigame into it was already going to be challenging on the best of days. They even indicate as much with a bunch of tutorials and even a skill or two wrapped around the fact that if you smash like a goddamned enraged bull through the city's communal bicycle storage, it's not going to alert the person you're following as much. Also, like so many titles with these kind of elements, the NPCs are anything but observant. Tailing them usually involves you walking behind them as they meander back and forth across the street, sometimes looking backwards to see who is following them. Now, this results in the hilarity of you standing there open-mouthed as you're caught in the middle of the friggin' street and the NPC's awareness meter climbing towards failure. So, of course, you do the thing that just screams ninja. You sprint across the street, leap over a set of traffic cones, and then dive behind a pile of bikes and smash the button to go into cover. To which the NPC shrugs and thinks to themselves, that is way more normal than a dude just walking in the same direction as me, and promptly continues to move on. And I'm not sure why tailing in games hasn't seen improvements since the damned PS1 era, but really, whenever these moments come up in gameplay, the same problems rear their ugly heads. Luckily, as I said, this never actually gets in the way in the game, but it is unintentionally hilarious many times when you're doing that. And it doesn't stop there. There's the photography mission. So sometimes you need to gather evidence for a case, and that means following someone and lining up a camera shot or tracking a criminal down and doing the same thing. Each shot has a number of requisites that need to be in the picture listed on the right, like the person, something near them, a sign, and so on, which all have to be done in a single shot, or boom, game over screen, where you can either retry or leave the activity. The issue here is the game, for whatever reason, just consistently updates the list and indicates if your camera view has all the needed elements, and it does it with audible notifications. So waiting for the perfect shot sounds like you're playing a Sega Master System game, as the menu's like ding 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 diddly ding 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 ding. Just checking boxes, then unchecking them, then checking them again, then unchecking them and changing his mind, checking them again. I actually like those missions, regardless of that. But damned if that did not get annoying while playing. However, I sat there and ended up doing a bunch of those missions anyway because I actually enjoyed how they came together and the little stories and narratives. It's just a little bit odd. Now, when it comes to Yakuza, it's always relished in as side dishes, mini games, and Judgment is the same, from playing arcade games in Sega theaters to dating girls to various collection activities, outfitting your little office with knickknacks, going to the batting cages, and so forth, and here also flying drones and races. Sadly, there's no karaoke to be seen, which is a sad omission. It may be related to the original Japanese voice actor's singing career and the lack of desire to overlap or some kind of cost issue, but sadly we don't have it. Now, despite the issues I talked about with the stealth sections, the investigations and the story itself is actually really, really interesting. They do a fantastic job elevating Judgment to the level close to its predecessors. And what you get is a game that isn't just a side story or a quick note in the history of gaming, like Gears of War Judgment or one of those crappy Assassin's Creed 2D games they tried to sneak in. Here, you get a full-fledged sibling and not the out-of-state cousin with questionable DNA mapping. It works. It tells a unique story that offers more to the world, and it's easy to be playing and think to yourself, what are the other characters doing from the other games right now? And you have to expect someone to sprint by chasing thugs just like you were doing in those games. The ability to weave in a narrative dynamically opposed to the seeped-in crime of the Yakuza games helps Judgment stand out on its own despite some problems. But is it enough? And that brings us to Fun Factor. This is the juice. Fun Factor can turn the tide. I think we've all got a game out there that doesn't look that great or sound that great or whatever, but we still dig it because it's enjoyable. Luckily, Judgment's got a lot going for it. And despite missing a couple mini games here or there and absolutely questionable stealth elements, Judgment is fun as hell. I just love the world they've created. It's not just the story and the unique narrative voice point that I like. It's that you still sometimes get your battle on, rage against people hanging out on the street, dumb enough to step up to you, and you put their face against a wall after punching them 30 times and then knee them in the head hard enough to transfer donor tissue for your future ACL surgeries. It's just fun. It's engaging. Keeps you wanting to do one more mission, one more battle, in that cyclic way in which you continue to experience things at your pace, and you have the different story elements, and you have the different side missions, and you have all the different activities. It does feel like a fleshed out world, and that is something that, despite all the claims to the contrary, a lot of titles actually don't deliver that well. This might actually be one of the largest of these games in the series, and due to the changes, possibly the most refreshing. And speaking of refreshing, I'm sure you're all hoping for the end, so let's get to it. And this is the rating. As you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system. This is a buy for sure. It may be fair to say it has an uphill battle to attract fans who want to stick to the original narrative, but to me that's not only doing Judgment, but the entire series a disservice. Sure, it's not as slapstick, or at least as comedic driven in its tones as Yakuza, but it replaces that with something that I find equally enjoyable, which is an incredibly unique character. I liked it. I liked the story. Despite the issues with the different gameplay elements, I actually liked them combined as well. It is a unique world, but none of the Yakuzas have been perfect. There's always been little issues here and there. That's not really what they're about. They're about offering a wide breadth of things that you can do. Judgment does the same, but it does it with a different narrative slant, and I think that's awesome. So that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. You can always come on over to Patreon and become a patron of the channel. I'm telling you right now, it absolutely help, especially now with almost everything demonetized, over hundreds of copyright strikes and claims that we're all getting. YouTube is a very difficult place right now. And if I've saved you any money, or maybe found you a title that you didn't expect to enjoy, but I told you about it, you want to jump into one of the best communities there is in gaming, I would love for you to come on by. It is a unique place and great people. That's it for me. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.